What's going on, guys? This is Aaron from Departures Capital, and we're here with Mark Henderson, President, Chief Executive Officer, and Director at Laramide Resources. It's a pleasure to have you on today, Mark. How you doing?
Yeah, great, Aaron. Good to see you again.
Yes, I'm excited to be talking about the company. So can you start by giving us an update on the company, telling us everything that you've been up to since we last spoke, which was, I think, at least a year ago?
Yeah, I'm surprised it's been that long, but it's been
Hmm.
been a very busy year. The space that we're in is getting more and more popular, obviously, as nuclear kind of gets back into the conversation. So I think most of the companies like ours, and we're a development stage company, basically building future supply of uranium for nuclear power plants for electricity purposes around the world. And so we've been very busy on our two flagship assets, the one in North America in New Mexico called Church Rock, and also in Australia. We have a large asset called Westmoreland, which is in Queensland in Northern Australia. In the US asset, everything was focused really this year on trying to get the economic picture of that asset out to the marketplace in what's called a PEA, preliminary economic assessment. It basically gives you an idea of what the scale of the project is and the economics of the project and what have you, in order to obviously ultimately raise the money to build it, but also what kind of earnings profile you might expect as the asset gets developed. We had to do some background drilling on that because this is an asset that we basically bought the asset, and so because none of the data was ours, we had to go validate the data. That's just an exercise you have to do in these resource companies, and so that was the first step, and we completed that in February, and then we've been working on this economic study, which should be coming out relatively shortly now. And then moving on to Australia, we've had a very active drill program there this year for the first time in many, many years, because uranium went through a very long bear market, and most companies like ours kind of went quiet for quite a while, but I'd say everything's back on firing on all cylinders, and we did a substantial program there with 40 plus drill holes, some of which are just sort of starting to trickle out now. So yeah, we've had a busy year, and more results and more news flow to come here before it's over. But yeah, no, we're definitely getting moving now and getting these projects, visibility on the road to production.
Yeah, you've been up to a lot. So the company just closed a $12 million financing. Can you tell us more about this? Why is it so important, and what are your plans for that capital moving forward?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. We just did a financing, which is a little unusual because we're listed in Australia actually, and have been for some time. We've never really taken advantage of that, and we just decided it was time, with the renewed interest in all things uranium over there as well, that we try and kind of get the trading and the activity going there. There's a lot of fairly active institutions, small institutions, resource-focused institutions there, and so we were able to do a nice equity raise there. With basically small institutions, family offices, and high net worths, and it was very seamless exercise. The whole thing took less than 2 weeks, and they tend to be done at relatively nice terms compared to North America, where oftentimes you end up doing financings with warrants attached and that sort of thing. The tradition in Australia is more to do things at a smallish discount to market, with no warrants or anything like that attached. So we raised 12 million, and we're kind of charged up and ready to go into next year, where we'll have a more substantial program in Australia next year than we did this year, probably with multiple rigs.
It's great to have cash in this market. So can you give us an update on your current drill program?
So the program we did in Australia was really designed to, first of all, reactivate everything, just be on the ground, dealing with all the locals and all that. We hadn't been there in a long time. When we were developing this program in the last cycle, before everything kind of went pear-shaped, if you will, post-Fukushima, and the nuclear went into a long bear market, we had really focused on developing the asset to the point where people understood what it was, similar to what we're doing now in the US, where you understand the economics. We did a PEA, so we knew what the production profile was and that sort of thing. We have a very large land package there, and we've added to it actually in subsequent years. And we never really focused on the exploration potential because it was already big enough. Like, it's 50+ million pounds. It supports the PEA we did, supports a production profile, between 3 and 5 million pounds a year, which makes it a kind of top 10 global uranium mine if it was in production today. But there were an awful lot of what you would sort of consider low-hanging fruit on the exploration front, satellite type deposits and that kind of thing, because we're talking about an open pit operation. And so we just kind of went and said, let's go back and have a good crack at all the these kind of easy targets that we have in places where we can bump the resource. And so that's really what we focused on. So we drilled 4 discrete targets, a couple of which had never been drilled before, and a couple of which are probably more like infill expansion type targets. We've only released results from the one target, which is called Amphitheater. And that target is 10 miles from the nearest other open pit deposit that'll be in the production plan. So it gives you a sense of the scale of the asset. That one we've had some success with. It looks quite interesting. I mean, the grades are comparable to what they get in places like Namibia in terms of these open pit operations. 300, 400 ppm kind of thing. And then we have another target that we haven't released any results on yet. That's 8 miles to the east of where the core operation will be. And we know there was holes there previously, and we're kind of building on that. And so we're expecting hopefully some decent results that come out of that as well.
Sounds great. So, the uranium market has experienced some volatility over the last few months. Can you give us your outlook for 2024, along with telling us what you feel will drive the market forward from here?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do that. I think since we spoke last, I'm sure we, would have spoken about the underlying thesis, which was why people should have cared about uranium and nuclear power. And I think the nuclear power part is clearly sort of happening now, and you can see it in the headlines that are developing in terms of the number of either pre-existing nuclear nation states, if you will, that had nuclear power that are returning to it or thinking about expanding it. England being the case, one of classic case in point, where they're building this enormous power plant on the southern coast at a place called Hinkley Point. It's the largest construction program in Europe, and it'll be supply a big chunk of their power when it opens up in 27. But you've had other expansions, and you've had other life extensions. So one of the other things that really drives the demand is if you have an asset that people thought was going to run for 60 years and they suddenly have 20 more years of life, it needs 20 more years of fuel. So the kick on demand from that is actually much more immediate than a new country deciding they're going to build a nuclear power plant that's probably 6, 7, 8 years away. So you've had a lot of these sort of forces come together, and I think a lot of the people that were watching this trade analytically, I would say it was kind of a deep contrarian type trade. And it was a little frustrating because it took a long time, and people were just going, when is this really going to happen, or is it ever going to happen? And I think those folks have all been validated dramatically now as we've really seen the price take off. And I think you saw sort of a really stealth bull market start to really kick in here in the summer. We went from sort of 45, 50 very quietly, week over week, moving up, and we're at $75 spot now. And it's sort of the utilities who are always the ones saying, nah, there's lots of uranium around, don't worry. We always manage to keep the plants full. And they're the ones now that are really kind of in scramble mode. So I think we found a nice kind of equilibrium up here around $75. We used to, on our side of the table, the potential supplier side, there was always this concept about the incentive price you needed in order to get new projects to sort of start coming online, because obviously they need a return. And that number for the longest time was $65. I think we're kind of in the process now of resetting that number somewhere higher. I can't tell you where it's going to land, but consensus wise, but maybe $75, $80, something like that. And most of the projects that are in these development companies now will work quite nicely at those prices. So there are people calling for crazy numbers out there, like 200. I'm probably not in that camp, but I do think slow and steady is probably the order of business here now going forward. The utilities, the market is legitimately really this tight. We had a lot of one-off kind of problems that hit the tape this summer, including coup in Niger, things like that. And so, yeah, this market is, it's not going to, the supply demand thing didn't get in this place quickly, and we won't get out of it quickly. So I think for stocks like ours, the biggest driver oftentimes is the macro and the uranium price, because it drives a lot of the flows into things like ETFs and everything, and that gets people excited. It drives the brokerage firms. So we're in a kind of a happy place right now, and I think that's probably going to continue. And now we're obviously also doing things on a company specific level in terms of deliverables that I think are going to make the market, reasonably happy and give us a possibility of a revaluation as we deliver these news flow into the marketplace.
Thanks for breaking that down, Mark. That's very interesting. So, where's the best place for investors or prospective shareholders to find out more information on the company? Where should they go after this video?
Well, obviously our website is a good place to start at laramide.com. And for general nuclear information, the World Nuclear Association is a great place if you want to get a bigger sense of, how big a role nuclear plays in the world and where all these power plants are and where all the future demand is coming from. That's a pretty good, that's probably the authoritative source out there.
Great, Mark. Well, thank you so much for all that info. Best of luck with your operations as we go into 2024. And I look forward to having you back on for more updates in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate the opportunity to talk today.
If you like these videos, kindly hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications. Drop us a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. And finally, always remember Departures Capital is for information, education, and entertainment purposes only. Don't buy or sell a stock because you heard it on here. Buy or sell a stock because you've done your research, you've done your thorough due diligence, and you're making your own personal investment decisions for yourself. This video is not financial advice. Furthermore, this video may or may not have been sponsored by the companies that we've profiled within this video, and we may or may not own shares of any of the profiled companies in this video. If you want to know the full disclosure details, check the description down below along with thoroughly reading our disclaimer. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.